I'll just take them in order as I find them. Ben, I don't think we've spoken before, Ben. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. This is the first time I've been to an activity with the House of Inner Tranquility. I wonder, I'm very new to Buddhism practicing. If you could just very quickly tell me a little bit about the school or the lineage of this particular group, and
Yeah.
I don't know, I might not even understand all the details, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, of course. So the kind of Buddhism that we practice here comes from Thailand. So it's Theravadan Buddhism.
Okay.
So the lineage is that there was a gentleman, an English gentleman, who went out to Thailand to practice. Called his ordained name was the Venerable Kapilawadu Bhikkhu. Englishman in Thailand. He came back to this country. This was in the 60s. He came back into the country to teach, set up a little center in London. And my teacher and his then wife, that's Alan and Jackie James, trained under him. Alan ordained under him and was a Theravadan monk under him. And Jackie was also a full-time student under him. The Venerable Kapilawadu Bhikkhu passed away. Alan and Jackie completed their training and decided that they'd like to start a meditation center. So we find ourselves here in Bradford-on-Avon in Wiltshire in England, because they found an appropriate place to start their center. That was in 1980. They decided that they wanted to absolutely keep to what is taught in the Pali Canon. So in the Theravadan tradition, the Pali Canon is the main source of knowledge of the Buddha's teaching. But what they didn't want to do was to bring in the cultural aspects of Buddhism as it's found in Thailand. They felt it was more appropriate to adapt things to suit our climate, our culture, as we find it in Southwest England. So there are adaptations made to suit the typical Western mindset, rather than thinking that you have to adopt the sort of cultural trappings that come with Theravadan Buddhism from Thailand. So we sit on chairs to meditate. We don't chant. We really are about the practical application of the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. So we've got a center here that caters for retreats, and there's the opportunity for people to come in for full-time monastic training. And that we have a lot of support. Students come in as day students and spend a day here meditating with the full-timers and helping out in the afternoons. And it's all based on generosity. So the entire history of the center, it's been based on people supporting the center financially and in terms of their energy. Everything that we've created over the 40 years has been through generosity. So that's very good, because that keeps us on the straight and narrow, because it means that if we're not fulfilling the teaching properly, we will lose support. So, it means that we keep to what Alan and Jackie fostered in the beginning, because it's so effective. But essentially that. So people support the center, and we support them by providing the facilities and giving them instruction in Vipassana meditation, insight, wisdom, which is the Theravadan meditation.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Well, that was a lovely, nice evening. Just the one question. We're all done. If you have a question, but there's the raise hands icon at the bottom of the screen you can use. Annie, hello. Then just unmute yourself and we can have a chat.
Right, okay, I'm assuming my hand's up. Right. Yes. Oh, just during the breakout meeting, Paul. I just thought I'd take off the make you the main speaker, the only speaker. It was very clear that what's on offer in terms of the weekend meditation would be far too difficult for me. And I was just thinking, I was hoping I could have done a sort of step by step kind of incremental build up. So I don't know that that's going to be possible, is it? It's out when I asked Sally about what were the requirements for a or what was the program for the weekend.
Yeah.
It's predominantly meditation, isn't it? And hours. We're talking, I don't know what it would be, 15, 16 or more hours. So since I struggle to do my 15 minutes a day, it's like it's not looking as if it's going to be possible.
Yeah, I think one of the keys to success, well, there are a few keys to success. One is the realization that defeat is your friend. It sounds odd, but like, you cannot succeed at something, you cannot become a skilled master or craftsman at anything without lots and lots of defeats, and the willingness to pick yourself up and dust yourself down, and the endurance to say, no, this is really worth it, I really want this. So that's one of the keys to success, is appreciating that the defeat is actually part of the process of becoming a true master. And I think defeat also shows us our limitations. And like somebody who becomes truly skilled, part of what makes them truly skilled is their willingness to accommodate their limitations and to work within their limitations. So it would be counterproductive for somebody who struggles to get 15 minutes of seated meditation for them to dive into a weekend retreat that is silent other than speaking to the teacher, and do all that meditation. It would be, I wouldn't let you, Annie. If that's where we're at, I wouldn't let you, because I wouldn't want you to have to go through that process. But if you learn gradually, if you accept your limitations, and that you work gracefully within those limitations, you can still become a skilled master, because you're not putting so much. It's undoubtedly the case that we need pressure on the path. It's like, that's how diamonds are formed, through the creation of pressure. But too much pressure just causes someone to snap, and that's not healthy. So I think it's more productive to say, yeah, okay, at the moment, given current situations, spending all that time on retreat is probably not in my best interest. That acknowledgement and recognition is to your advantage.
So maybe when I'm 90 years old, I might be able to come to
Well, the beautiful thing about what I love about the fact that things arise and pass away is that they keep on arising. And essentially, when you start to see that, you recognize that life is always giving us another chance. There is always another chance. You never come to an absolute end. And so if you think of the path, yeah, perhaps thinking of it in terms of many lives, and being willing to learn the lessons over that period of time. It's amazing what you can get done in this lifetime if you have an optimistic outlook, and also the knowledge that it isn't one life and then kaput. And so you work within your limitations happily, rather than feeling burdened by something which is too much. And you just work at it gracefully at your own speed and in your own way. And gradually you learn more about what it is that you do that prevents you from sitting for longer than 15 minutes. And gradually you're able to extend it, and you make it to 20 minutes, and you make it to 30 minutes. And yeah, perhaps when you are 90, yeah, perhaps you will be ready to come on retreat.
I think we're talking the next life, Paul.
I think probably we are, but that's no bad thing, Yeah. Unless somebody is so staunchly a one life view person. But if somebody is so staunchly one view life, what are they doing here? What are they doing on a Buddhist, online meeting? Because that's fundamental to the Buddha's teaching. So, because then you have a way of working every day at the meditation in a comfortable way, and you develop at your own speed. you will progress quicker than if you try to accomplish something that is currently beyond your grasp. And that's true for us all.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you're all very reticent this evening. Oh, Mark. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Paul. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I wasn't going to ask a question, but I forced myself. Can I ask you a bit about perception, Paul?
Perception.
So, in meditation lately, the noting of perception is quite prominent with regard to name and form. So, at least I think it's regard to name and form. So there's the noting of different aggregates and different conditions and resultants going on. And then there is the noting of like a label of, there is perception that is assigning a kind of a label to an object. Let's say it's a barking dog. And I guess what I'm asking is this not quite sure what am I asking? So there is the noting of perception, and that the perception is happening by itself. So there isn't anyone, there's no Mark or me choosing what the perception is.
Okay.
It struck me that essentially what this could mean is that this idea of conventional reality is essentially the various aggregates of perception naming experience due to previous conditions. Does that make sense?
Okay, I'm working my way through that. So is it the suggestion that there really isn't much to conventional reality at all?
Yes, 100%. So
really, yeah. It is a, you know, this is deep stuff, and you have to take your time, and
yeah,
it's until we come to practicing insight wisdom, our only referent is the conventional world. We don't even know that it's the conventional world because there isn't anything to compare it to. So for people that might not appreciate this, is that insight wisdom is asking us to deconstruct reality down into its component parts in order to see how magically it's all created and comes into being moment by moment. And so we have this division between these basic fundamental components that go to make up an experience, which we call ultimate reality, and the Buddha called the 5 aggregates, of which perception is one. And then in their weaving together through their influencing one another and creating these weaving patterns, we get the conventional reality of Mark and Paul and Bradford and Avon and Pennsylvania and the rest of it. So we have this conventional reality, and the more you look at these ultimate building blocks and you deconstruct your conventional reality to see that it's really all these components are just arising and passing away, and there really isn't any substance to it. And that has a dramatic effect. And the most dramatic effect it has is on the reduction and elimination of the tendency to crave for life to be different. There has to be something substantial there to warrant craving for it to not be there, or for it to be different, or for it to be improved, or somehow other. And craving is what causes our suffering. So what we're doing when we're practicing insight meditation is deconstructing an experience like a barking dog, the experience of a barking dog, into its components, hearing and the perception of dog and all these various components, And then we see how it's all put together again through conditions. And we see it's this seamless process of the unfolding of reality, which creates this wonderful play, this cosmic play of the dog barking. And what you see is that in reality, there is no dog barking. And yet there's a dog and it's barking. And so you have this wonderful paradox where it resolves itself through the understanding of emptiness. But in one sense, in the conventional sense, we say, yes, there's a dog barking. But in another sense, you see that it is empty of any inherent reality. It is a wonderful conjurer's trick. This whole reality is this wonderful conjurer's trick. And it's just sublime. It's wonderful. And I think, Mark, what you're saying is that there's the discovery again and again and again that there are these perceptions arising which are naming the experience, but there isn't a substantial experience behind the naming. Is that really what you're saying?
Yes. And I guess the question, if there is one, is it the case? I mean, the dog barking it's like there is a labeling of many different resultants, all conditioning one another, and that label says dog bark. It doesn't say yogurt or table or anything else.
Yeah.
It says dog bark, and that is a I guess my what I'm asking is not that it particularly matters, I suppose, what the actual label is, because the characteristics are I guess the same, but that actual label, is that itself is the actual label itself a result of prior conditions? I'm assuming it is, because it feels like that's just a convention that I've grown up in, that particular experience is agreed between us all to be dog barking. Whereas if I happen to be on another part of the world where there are no dogs, I don't know if there's such a place, on an island where they've only got cats or something, then the label would be different.
Yeah, so absolutely that's the case. I mean, because what I'm thinking there is, I mean, it sort of like blossoms out. You know, it's like two people do not experience things in exactly the same way. Yeah, we have these general agreements that we're culturally adapted to, perhaps, but there's an awful lot of disagreement about narratives and which is the correct narrative. And oh my goodness, there's so much conflict in the world because people see things so differently. Our task as meditators is to recognize that indeed perceptions are conditioned. And the wonderful thing about that is that it means perceptions are not fixed. You can change your perceptions by the way that you choose to behave. And the classic example of that in the Buddha's teaching is the practice of loving kindness meditation. You can wake up feeling in a rotten mood and seeing everyone around you as just like terrible people for one reason or another. You can sit down and practice some loving kindness, and that will change your perceptions and you'll start seeing people as lovable. So perceptions are not fixed. It's helpful, I think, if you're living in a society to, generally speaking, to share perceptions about things. For instance, there's the case of the school in Wembley that apparently has the strictest head teacher in the world, Barbara Singh, I think her name is, something like that. And she has this school which is so ethnically diverse, but she's worked out that what you have to give them is something that, a common identity that they all share, a common perception. So every morning they sing the national anthem, and she emphasizes the Britishness of everyone who is there. And that has the effect of giving a sense of a unifying perception for all the kids at the school. And so it helps enormously in creating this sense of harmony within the culture. And one of the problems we have as a culture currently is how differently people are perceiving the same things. And so having overarching perceptions that we all agree upon is an important part of having a coherent society. But the more you practice the Buddha's teaching, you can retain those, all the while knowing that that's one way of seeing it, yeah. But there are all these other ways of seeing it too. And so you're not fixed, you're not attached to one way of seeing the world. And you start to be able to play a little bit more about perceiving things from different points of view. And that can be great fun, actually.
Yeah, I suppose
it's not fixed.
I suppose the path itself, the training of noting the conditionality and transience of it all, is itself going to massively condition and change perception, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, I mean, the idea that you would that through this practice you actually perceive emptiness, and so you go from seeing things as fixed objective realities, like that's a dog barking over there and it's the same experience for everyone, like a fixed substantial experience, to this is all just this beautiful cosmic game that's unfolding. You cannot get a more massive shift and change in perception of life. And essentially that's what the Buddha's teaching is saying. It's like people misperceive. That's what avijja, ignorance, is. It is the misperception of reality. And the practice of the Buddha's teaching, especially insight wisdom, is the corrective. So you're replacing the false view that things are permanent with the correct view and the correct perception that things are impermanent, that they're not satisfactory, they're unsatisfactory. You're replacing the view and the perception that this is self or this belongs to me, to the recognition that it is not self. It's a dependently originated, it's conditions. And so, yeah, that's a this is absolutely revolutionary. It goes it's not just, this isn't about just like becoming a slightly nicer person as you go through life. There is that aspect, but really this is a revolutionary leap in understanding of the true nature of reality. So it's, yeah, you cannot get a bigger change in your perception than that, I think. Does that help, Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Really very helpful. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Sally, you made it.
Hey, hello. My question sort of links with Mark's, but in a slightly different avenue. So in the breakout room, we were talking about our meditations and sort of how we feel about them and how they're going. And something that occurred with one of the other meditators that I'm certainly experiencing is getting fixated on labeling what's arising and passing away. And at what point do you sort of stop obsessing about, hang on a minute, oh, I've missed that, it's gone, oh, I didn't label that, where do I go now? Because then you're becoming quite obsessed. You need to take a step back. But what would your advice be?
Well, you're noticing it. You're noticing that it feels excessive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So this is the great benefit of keeping a journal and writing down your experiences and learning as you go along. It's you have to learn it in real time, which you are doing. And one of the pitfalls is the belief that I have to note everything.
Yeah.
and it's, you know, it comes down to our conditioning as, I call it the peewees, the Protestant work ethic. The wonderful thing about meditation, when you find the balance, it is so delightfully within yourself that you're not pushing the envelope, that you're not trying to force the progress and force things forward. And so what I'd suggest is, yeah, coming down a couple of gears, coming off the gas, settling down into, you know, a nice second gear or something. So you are moving, but slowly. And just content yourself with noting the most obvious thing. You know, there's always something that the mind just gets drawn to, you know, and just content yourself with just noting that. Now, what might happen is if you have a strong work ethic, what might happen is then doubts start to arise, or a feeling of guilt that I'm not working. The sense, you know, some people can actually be put off by the fact that it's so, actually what's being asked is so simple. And there's this feeling, no, it has to be complex. But it isn't. The practice itself is delightfully simple. And you actually move quicker in terms of developing insight through reducing, you know, the effort to find that lovely balance. And that lovely balance is where you're not striving, but you're attentive. And objects that can be noted are arising, and you are waiting for them to make themselves known to you. And there is a sense of contentment that, oh, all I have to do is note the strongest impingement, whether that's a sound, a thought, a feeling, a sensation at that moment. Yeah. And you know you've got the balance because it starts to become pleasurable. You become interested and fascinated, and your curiosity and faith also starts to emerge. And there's this sense, lovely sense of, I'm just exactly where I want to be.
I think you can tell when you're overdoing it, can't you? Because you start to become irritable. I don't know if anybody else feels like that, but you get this sense of irritation of, and you can't really explain it sometimes. Yeah.
Well, you have, and you've explained it beautifully. Yeah, absolutely. It can get tense. People get irritable. They get doubtful. There are all these responses because people are trying too hard. It is a middle way. And perhaps other people have experiences of what it feels like to try too hard that they can share. There's also not trying hard enough. That's the other side of the coin. But I think I was talking about this on Wednesday night at our first meeting. Knowing that you don't know is an extraordinarily beneficial attitude. That if you enter into a meditation with no ambition, no expectation, no pattern that you think that you ought to be, that meditation ought to be, that you're just here in the moment and just waiting for the universe to express itself in whatever way it wants to express itself. So currently I'm sitting here in this direction. I've got the church bells. Oh, I've just fallen off my seat. On the other side, I've got roadworks, literally a pneumatic drill. My seat's just destroyed itself. So life is expressing itself in whatever way it chooses to, and I'm coming at it from a place of not knowing. If I had this idea that in this situation, my chair shouldn't collapse, there shouldn't be any church bells, there shouldn't be the noise of workmen outside, then I'm suffering because the pattern doesn't match the reality. But if I've got no pattern, then I literally, there is nothing wrong. I don't have to change anything. I'm just allowing the sounds to occur and noticing that they're transient. I'm noticing feeling slightly awkward right now, but I don't mind. That's fine. I'm just trying to stay as still as I can.
Cool. Do you think setting up the meditation, as you quite often say in other sessions, is a good idea? Sometimes I find when you're thinking about meditation from a gratitude point of view, I'm really grateful for this moment of silence, of peace. Do you think that tends to help? Or
I think anything that brings about a letting go of opposition to what's going on in the moment. So practicing gratitude is exactly that, because gratitude is saying yes to this moment. It's saying yes to the conditions that I find. Again, it does relate exactly to what Mark was saying, because you're changing the perception. You're changing the perception from life is wrong at this time to life is right at this time. You're coming into the flow rather than being in a state of opposition to the flow. Yeah, so absolutely, that makes a tremendous difference. And the beautiful thing is, if you've established, and you can do it through generosity, you can do it through just sheer appreciation of what's actually unfolding in your experience now, saying, I like that, I like that, I like that, I like that. That's bringing you into harmony and the flow with your experience. Loving kindness meditation will do the same thing. And once you're in the flow, it's so much easier to find that lovely balance. Once you've said yes to life, yes, you can present yourself life however you want. Reality is a lot bigger than us. It probably pays to agree with it more often rather than disagree with it. So you come into more of a harmony and a balance with unfolding reality, and then you can just sit and rest and be content without any pattern, without any knowledge of what is or is not supposed to arise in this moment. Yeah.
thank you, Paul. Thanks.
Gosh, how did that happen? All right. Right, somebody has their hand up. Jay, hello.
Hi, you can hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't quite see you. You're not quite on.
Yeah, sorry, I'm over here. But like, I was just, my phone's on the charger, Matt. I've had
Oh,
problems
okay.
today
No worries.
with it doesn't work on the laptop. Phone using, so sorry about that.
Oh, I'm having troubles too. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I was good job I was muted because I
Oh.
try not to laugh out loud when you did that because it was like quite funny in a nice way. But it got the point across well. I was it Sally the woman before? Sorry, I missed her name. I didn't quite hear. Who did you say?
Sally,
The woman? Yeah. No, that was really helpful for me as well. And that's partly wasn't the question I get to in a second, but it was that's been my experience in a very short time, that actually I feel like I was trying too hard, and I've recently stopped trying so hard, and I feel like I'm much happier with trying less hard, which has been kind of lovely to sort of feel like. And I've really enjoyed meditating outdoors when I can, because I find that really helps, because I just listen to the birds and the water and whatever else, and kind of it unfolds in front of me, and I find that quietens my mind quite well. I did that yesterday on a walk, so that was quite nice. But nonetheless, the question I was going to ask, when Mark and yourself were having that sort of conversation, the question and answer, and you talk about, I may get it slightly wrong, but the supporting conditions and things, like, so there was the bark, and then you know, well, the dog, not the noise, and then the perception is it's a dog barking. But sometimes you've sort of implied, or I've heard it that way, that there's other bits to it, and I'm thinking, other than the noise that anyone's brain will perceive and make sense of that noise differently depending on their experiences in life up to that point, I guess. And what else is there in terms of different steps? I'm kind of thinking, I understand that I've heard a noise, now my brain's trying to work out what that noise it was, what it means, and I'm labeling it accordingly. But beyond that, which I understand isn't a fixed thing, it's a perceptive thing, what other bits are that make up that experience, I suppose, is the bit I'm sort of not sure about.
I can appreciate that you wouldn't be sure about that. There's you know, it's like how accurately we define the poor, you know, because if we get right down to brass tacks in terms of the components that go to make up an experience, at the time that there is a sound, there is only the sound and the knowledge that there's a sound.
Yeah.
And you could also perhaps add in the sense space. If we're getting right down to brass tacks, that is all that exists in that moment. Right?
Yeah.
And there are other processes that arise in series, not in parallel.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of ultimate experience, there are no parallel experiences. So you don't see something at the same time that you smell it. You know? If they're seeing, in the next moment they're smelling, the seeing has ceased and the smelling has arisen. Right. So if we get right down to it, there is very little going on. And there is this infinitely complex weaving of these moments of conscious experience that go to create the elaborate conventional reality. So another way of putting this is like you can only see one thing at a time. Yes, we know that there are other processes at work, but in sort of meditatively, we only want to be concerned with what is exactly happening at this moment. Now, we do the intellectual work of developing our understanding of ultimate reality. We get an understanding of the 5 aggregates. I also recommend an understanding of the 6 sense bases and their objects, what I like to call the 6 sensory fields. If you've got both the 5 aggregates and the 6 sensory fields, and you've also got a working understanding of condition-dependent origination, you will come to comprehend the true nature of reality.
Okay.
But I think that if you try to see it all or see more in the meditation practice itself, you'll just get yourself so confused and so worked up, it'll all come clanking to a halt.
Yeah, and I think the spirit I've stepped backwards on it, so it's been better. But at the same time, I'm still a bit curious as to. I probably need to read again about the aggregates and things. Some of that.
Oh yeah, it's a fascinating subject.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got it right here because I love it so much. In the end, you'll get to the point where you can read this, a comprehensive manual of Dhamma, and that is a description of ultimate reality in all its complexity.
Okay.
Do you actually require this in order to realize freedom from suffering, to realize Nibbana? No. But what you do need is a working understanding of the 5 aggregates, 6 sensory fields, and conditionality, I would say. And of course, the 3 marks.
When you say the 5 aggregates, excuse my ignorance possibly, but is that the same as hindrances?
No,
that's right. Yeah, okay.
Hindrances fall under one of the 5 aggregates, the aggregate of mental formations. So the Buddha divided up ultimate reality into these 5 aggregates: materiality, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness.
Okay, right, okay. That makes a lot of sense.
I think, Jay, I think you're just running before you can walk. I would say if you just relax, back up a little bit, and don't be so anxious about getting more and more information. Just take your time. I think you'll end up moving more quickly.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's helpful. Sometimes, that's cool. I can take that. And it's like, just sometimes it's good to sort of understand that I don't understand it a bit, if that makes sense, and then to leave it for now. So that's fine. I just got a bit confused, but that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. And I would suggest that to everyone. It's like in some senses, this whole thing is so simple, but when you start to work at it intellectually, it can become so complex so quickly. And there are so many different strands. I worked at it full time. I was a full-time monk, 24/7, dedicated to this. And I absolutely love this stuff. I absolutely love Vipassana. It was just the best thing ever. And I loved deconstructing reality, but I was doing it full time. I was doing like 5 separate hours of meditation every day, and then developing my mindfulness so I could mindfully note in all the situations that I found myself in. So it was a very dedicated approach. That's why it didn't take, in the grand scheme of things, it didn't take me that long. But I think you'll go faster through simplifying. I know somebody who finished the training, and I happened to see her in town the other day, and wonderful woman, she never went anywhere near any of this. Like, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. So different people need different levels of intellectual involvement. And I think for the intellectually minded, you just have to be a little bit careful, because if we become enlightened through reading a book, that's what the Buddha would have done. He would have just written a book. But all the books, the whole of the Pali Canon, is based on what? It's based on real human experience that was codified in the books. So we have to, what we discover in the books is valuable, really, really helpful, but we have to understand that we have to see it, we have to experience it, we have to go through the insight knowledges, through the development of insight, wisdom, vipassana, and gain that true experiential understanding. And that's not dependent on intellect. It really isn't.
No, thank you. That's helpful. We can pick some of that up in interview, I think, of books. But sometimes it's just sort of, I'm totally with what you've just said from my own limited experience of this so far. But sometimes it's hard to know what you don't know, if you know what I mean, in terms of that, trying to know the details, but trying to kind of work out, okay, that's something I can leave for now. Do you know what I mean? And then it's that bit of guidance like you've just given is really helpful in that regard. So
yeah, good. And I also think faith does play a part as well.
Yeah.
Because doubts can arise because of the attempt to, intellectually get on top of it.
Yeah.
But the true understanding comes from a little bit of intellectual and an awful lot of experiential. And so it's just being willing to accept the discomfort of knowing that you don't know. It's quite humbling, but that's really I think one of the great secrets, to fully acknowledge that you don't know and look at life afresh from a point of view of knowing that you don't know, like I was saying on Wednesday night.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Peter, did you it was up and then it disappeared. Yeah, there you are.
Yes. Right. When you spoke about the 5 aggregates, I find it enormously useful to drop the word aggregate and think of 5 identities. We identify with the body, we identify with feelings, etc., etc. And I was hoping that this wasn't contradictory in any way in what you're teaching us.
I don't think so. I didn't come up with the term aggregates. I think it's quite a cumbersome word. But that's just, I got used to it, and I like the idea of you're indeed correct. It is the problem is identifying materiality as being either as being me or as relating to me in some way. It's like, oh, I'm here, that sound is over there, that's materiality, that's sound. I'm not that sound, but that sound is occurring to me. I am, so it is identified with in that way. But yeah, absolutely, it's a good point. Yeah, the problem is we identify with those 5 aspects of reality as being me or mine or myself or relating to me in some way.
Thank you.
No worries. Anyone else have any questions? Jim, hello.
Hi, Paul. I'm a little unsure about this question, but here goes. In the last newsletter, you described some meditative experience, and it seems to be echoed in your pre-meditation talk today that there was a period where you were going back and forth between breathing and thinking and breathing and thinking. And at some point you had a realization. In the newsletter, you emphasized devotion. in the talk today, you reminded us that, yeah, this is way easier and there's absolutely nothing we actually need to do to make the meditation work. The question is, after this realization, I'm imagining there was still thinking and breathing and thinking and breathing and thinking. It's just,
I hope it's breathing.
yes. It's just the attitude changed. And it wasn't an issue anymore. And it was all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to confirm that that was the case, that the thinking didn't just instantly disappear with that realization.
Oh no, I thought I put that in the actual article, that no, thinking carries on.
Yeah.
Thinking is not the problem. Thinking is not what prevents you from getting concentrated.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that somebody gets concentrated when they do loving kindness meditation? That's all thinking. It's a thinking-based meditation. So it's not thinking that prevents somebody from getting concentrated. Like this morning I was meditating and there were thoughts. I mean, literally just noting them as mental objects, not getting involved with them at all, but not denying them, not going, oh, stop, oh, mustn't do this, oh, mustn't do that. That's what prevents you from getting concentrated. Not the fact that there's thought, because thoughts are no more important than the birds singing. You know? I mean, how many people really, they hear the sweet sound of a bird singing in the garden and go, stop you, you're disrupting my meditation. Very few people would actually, unless it was an extraordinarily angry bird, generally speaking, we're not bothered by that at all. We just treat thinking, because we say it is me, because the bird singing in the garden, it's far easier to say, that's not me, that's not myself, than it is when a thought arises. When a thought arises, we go, no, that's definitely me, that's definitely mine. It's the identification with thinking as being me, which means you cannot allow it to just come and go as it chooses. Right? And so it's not important. And what you're thinking about is of very little account, and it isn't what you'd sat down to do. So the relationship with the thinking, yeah, it has to be sorted out, but it's realizing. Another way of putting this is like you create a problem where there isn't one.
Mm-hmm.
Say that thinking is a problem, it's getting in the way of meditation. And because then you have a problem, you seek a solution to the problem. And so the seeking a solution to the problem reinforces the sense that there's a problem. And so you get more and more wound up by the fact that you're thinking. Whereas if you just allow the fact that you're thinking.
Yeah, and once again, you're trying to control the meditation.
Exactly. So you've
Right.
got a pre-formed assumption and a pattern about what you think meditation should be: a thinking-free environment.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start thinking, well, even that is a thought. So you're already on the treadmill of thinking.
All right.
So it's a pattern that a pre-formed, assumed pattern. And so that's what gets in the way, because thinking is a lovely tool that we have as human beings. But we don't have to be its slave. We don't have to, just because we've had a thought doesn't mean that thought is relevant or accurate or needs to be taken seriously. They're just habitual tendencies arising in the moment.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. That's helpful.
And yeah, good. I mean, and the thing is to realize it's not. You don't have to control thinking, but when you become aware that you have been thinking, that's the golden moment. Right? When you become aware that you've been thinking, that's the golden moment, because that's the moment when you're mindful again. Mindfulness is a transient phenomenon like everything else. You set it up, say, I'm going to be mindful. You're mindful for a little while, and then the mindfulness lapses. It requires a new intention to be mindful, or to note mindfully. So the moment when you discover that the mind has gone off track and has gone into thinking mode, that defeat is a success. Because it's in that moment going, oh, I've gone into thinking. Oh, right, okay. So what type of thinking was it? Oh, I was worrying or planning or whatever. Okay, great. What's going to come up next? And if you've accepted that you think in meditation, you don't make a problem out of it. And because you don't make a problem out of it, you don't require a solution. Because you don't require a solution, you're not reinforcing the idea that thinking is a problem. And so it heals itself.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks for bringing it up. Any more for any more? Birgit, hello.
Hello. Just wanted to
Yeah.
ask I just wanted to ask a little bit more about that. Like you say, when you've become aware of the thinking, then that's when you are mindful again. And I was just wondering whether that would be the same with listening to a sound, for example, whether it's again sort of in series rather than at the same time, that you're listening to a sound and then you become aware of that you've been listening.
Okay, but isn't there, there's hearing, which is awareness of sound.
Yeah.
And then there is the mindfulness and clear comprehension of what's unfolding, which you'd say is what happens when we mindfully note. The key with mindfully noting is it's bringing that clear comprehension. So we all know what it's like. Who hasn't driven home from work, say, and got home and realized you can't remember anything about the journey whatsoever? Right. So that was saying, okay, there was a certain level of awareness. But what we're talking about here is mindfulness and clear comprehension, which is the real comprehension that is hearing. You see the difference? Birgit, do you see the difference?
Probably not. Sorry.
So I'm not denying. So there is hearing. There is, say, listening to the birds singing, and that's happening automatically, say. And then the point comes where there is the recognition that that is what's unfolding. That is a higher order level of comprehension, is it not?
And would that happen after the hearing?
Well, yeah. Well, if we're getting down to brass tacks again, strictly speaking, yes, it is occurring after the event, isn't it? Because you can only be aware of one thing at a time, actually.
Because I was just wondering whether there was so much of a difference between hearing and thinking then, because it feels so frustrating in meditation if you realize that you've been thinking for 5 minutes about and you haven't been mindful.
I think what's more important is the frustration.
Okay.
Like, why? I mean, it means that you have a view that meditation should be a certain way. It should conform to a certain pattern. And it's not conforming to the pattern. It's doing something else. So it might just be something like, I'm supposed to be mindful, and this is proof that I haven't been mindful. And then therefore I become frustrated. Whereas in actual fact, there is nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong. There is no rule of life saying that becoming aware that you had not been aware is somehow a violation of some ethical code. It just isn't. It's just not. It's not a bad thing. You have not gone wrong, unless you have created that moral distinction or that distinction that, you know, that that I am in charge of this meditation, and this meditation has to conform to the pattern I decree it should be. If you do that, then you will get frustrated. But if you've got no pattern, if you've got no expectation, if you're making no assumptions, but you're greeting life on its own, on its own merits, and that you're willing to allow for the fact that mindfulness lapses, that clear comprehension diminishes, and the mind naturally picks up a train of thought, and you're on that train of thought, and then there's that higher order recognition of what's taking place, that is all in order. Nothing has gone wrong. There has been no mistake. Yeah? Does that help, Birgit?
Yes. I think I just find it so different with regards to thoughts, to things like hearing or sensations or something. Like, I don't find I'm getting lost in sensations or I'm getting lost in hearing. So I was just trying to work out what the difference was.
Allow yourself to get lost in thinking. Allow yourself. You haven't gone wrong.
Okay.
Yeah? It's not a mistake. It's not an error. It's fine to get lost, because it's the point at which it's just simply your relationship to the discovery that you've been lost in thinking. That's all that matters. Because being lost in thinking, that was the reality at that moment. And clearly it's not completely under your control. So it's working at that. It's working at being more allowing of what you discover, because you haven't gone wrong. Okay.
Thank you.
Jason. Hello.
Hi, Paul. I was just thinking that when meditation has been frustrating, like I've found it useful, rather than sort of go, I shouldn't be frustrated, or, is to go, well, what is it that I'm expecting out of it that it isn't producing? So to sort of question, to ponder, rather than sort of be caught up in the frustration and anger of it all, is go, well, why am I so angry?
Very good point. I mean, what came up in my mind as you were talking was, like, there has to be acceptance, firstly, of the frustration, because we can fall into the trap of believing, well, because I'm frustrated, I'm making another error. I'm in error. Whereas the frustration is simply because of this pre-existing assumption. Yeah. So there has to be the willingness to wisely reflect. There has to be some sort of the frustration cannot arise. The frustration is arising because of a comparison of some description, so much. So taking some time out to think about, well, what are my assumptions about meditation? What do I want it to give me? And I mean, I go back to my eucalyptus tree moment where I was so frustrated. People won't know what I mean. There's a eucalyptus tree in the garden at the House of Inner Tranquility. I found myself sort of leaning on it, going, oh, woe is me, and I can't go on like this. And then the thought arose that it just had to be something that I was doing. The frustration had to be because of something that I was doing. And suddenly my relationship to the whole thing changed, and I went, all right, when's the next meditation? I've just got to get back in there and give it another go, so that I could find out what it was I was doing that created the frustration and and that's what I mean about defeat. You've got to be prepared to lose again and again and again and again in order to become skillful. So Jason, I agree. There has to be the willingness to reflect that you're just getting an error code. The frustration is just an error code. And you just got to work out, well, what's it pointing me to? What is the error? And it's got to be based on some kind of comparison.
Yeah, it's the agenda that produces the frustration. It's not, without the agenda, the frustration can't arise.
Yeah, it's not the thing.
No,
It's not the
no,
object in the
there's no
meditation at
agenda
all.
behind the meditation. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is why the path takes time. You know, because the action of mindfully noting the arising and passing away of phenomena and going through the insight knowledges itself doesn't take very long at all. It's all the other stuff that we do, which is all based in some aspect of craving life to be different than it is. And so essentially, you're given such a simple instruction to rest content in the moment, watching things arise and pass away. And it's in a sense, you could say the whole path is about, well, what does that actually mean? It's such a simple instruction, but I don't appear to be able to do it. What else am I doing? And so you go through all these layers of conscious and semi-conscious and unconscious assumptions and biases that cause you to think that somehow there is something wrong in the meditation. And you have to just work through that. That's what takes the time.
It's like the difficulties in it are the indication of some hidden agenda that you're not aware of or acknowledging.
Yeah. Yeah. And those have got to come to the surface. So we have these underlying drives that don't get looked at and don't get touched because we're always so busy acting out of them. You know? And so it takes that restraint of that habitual action to bring out that underlying drive, and then you can see what it is.
So in a way, like what you were saying earlier, is when it seems like the meditation is failing, it isn't at all. It's what's really happening is that some agenda is just being brought to a sort of painful kind of crisis point where you have to acknowledge it. You know?
Yes. Yeah. And hopefully it doesn't always have to be, painful and crisis ridden, but sometimes it is. I mean, we have to be honest. This is deep stuff. We're not playing here. True meditation is about looking at all those underlying drives, and it can be difficult at times. So, for instance, for somebody who feels that they have to be able to control, that mindfulness should allow them to control whether they think or not, their crisis is in letting go and letting everything just flow. That for them, for somebody else, it's like, oh, that seems like bliss. But for them, that would be the most frightening thing in the world. Just to let life live and let it flow and not be in control all the time. And so, so through that restraint of the desire to control and allowing things to flow, that brings up all these unconscious drives. For somebody else like myself, it was the other way around. It was this always wanting to just relax in the moment and just experience bliss and peace. And like mindful noticing at times felt like just the most excruciating hard work.
Sorry to butt in, Paul, but in about 1 minute, I think the whole meeting will actually shut down automatically.
All right, thanks.
We've run out of time, basically.
Yeah, shut up, Paul. All right, I think we covered it. So lovely to see you all. Really great that we've got this up and running again. And we will meet up again in a couple of weeks, if that's all right with you. So,
thanks, Paul.
Yes, thank you, Paul.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
a
you,
lot,
Paul.
Thank
Wonderful.
you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Paul.
Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
see you again soon.